Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's the Daily AI Show, and it's our news show every Wednesday. The world and everyone around the world who's connected in any way to AI is sitting on pins and needles today because the markets and the world may change depending on how Nvidia's earnings release comes out today. So we don't have news about that, but that's the backdrop. Everybody's nervous about whether Nvidia will sink the markets or propel new investment and support the advances of AI that we're also interested in. There are many other things that have happened with big models, and we have news from Perplexity and OpenAI. So we'll be talking about those things. Today is Wednesday, February 26th. You're listening to the Daily AI Show, and today with me I have Brian Masseri, Beth Lyons, Junmi Hatcher, and Carl Ye. I'm Andy Halliday, and let's kick it off. Who's got the top news story here?
I don't know about top, but you mentioned Nvidia, so at least I'll bring up that was one of my news stories. Not about what they're going to release for their earnings report, but there was news from yesterday talking about Nvidia and Arc Institute, who we've heard about before, partnering on an AI model with a genetic code for all domains of life. It says the AI, this is from Mobile Health News, the AI neural network will aid biomolecular research by predicting protein function. We've certainly heard a lot about protein in AI, identifying novel molecules, assessing gene mutations, and generating biological sequences. So what's really cool about this is a new model called EVO2, EVO, and then the number 2. And it says it's going to be accessible to global developers on the NVIDIA's BioNeMo platform. And BioNeMo is like bio, capital Ni, capital MO, BioNeMo. It's kind of a cool name on there. They're dealing with RDA and RNA and DNA, excuse me. Let's see. I love this quote. This is the last thing I wanted to bring in here. David Burke, who's Arc's chief technology officer, said, we know there's immense opportunity for exploration, but we don't know yet what we're going to discover. And I kind of love that, honestly, which is like, it's more like, oh, we have this new tool, we have this new toy, and man, are we going to dive in deep and do amazing things with it. But the exciting part is we don't know exactly what's going to happen when we turn on the lights. We don't know what we're going to see. We've just seen so much here in AI. Jimmy shared stories. We've seen so much in protein, RNA, DNA, all that stuff. So this is right in line with it. But hey, I feel bullish on it if Nvidia is involved and is part of this. So I thought it was a really cool story, and at least it's on the same page as Nvidia. I don't think this story alone is gonna sway the markets, but it's still really, really
No,
cool.
but it's an indication that Nvidia has a lot more of value to deliver to the AI marketplace than just the chips that they design.
Yeah.
So, there's a huge concentration of not only market value, but just connection and direction that Nvidia drives. And if Nvidia falters on their earnings projections and their trajectory of growth, that really has an outsized effect on the markets and on the willingness of people who are investing their time, effort, and money in AI to believe in the future being driven by AI investment rather than by other factors. So
Mm.
we're all connected to NVIDIA somehow, even if you don't own shares in that company.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, I just want to jump in there. We've been seeing this every single quarter, right? Everybody is essentially, Nvidia's every quarter. We've seen everyone always like, hey, what's Nvidia going to do? What's Nvidia going to do? And I know the last, I think quarter number 2 or 3, it was so super exciting when they split their stock because, I'm into long time Nvidia investor, and I was in it for the video games for the longest time, but it was exciting. But I think, isn't it a little bit precarious that an entire industry and entire markets are based on one company potentially and essentially,
Absolutely, Carl.
right?
Yeah, that's a
And
good term for it. It's a precarious situation.
and isn't it also funny that essentially everyone bows and genuflex at the altar of Jensen. It doesn't matter what model you have. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody, even Elon Musk, has to genuflect at the altar of Jensen, because if you don't have their chips, what do you have? So I thought that was also funny too.
Yeah, you don't really hear negative things about Jensen Huang, right? Like you don't like he seems to have the respect. I don't know for sure, but he seems to have the respect of the community at large. I don't know if that's because of his lengthy tenure, how long he's been involved. I think it's 30 plus years or something like that with Nvidia. Um, he obviously is very intelligent. I've watched several interviews like you guys had with him, and he always speaks eloquently. He always speaks at a level that you can understand. I don't ever feel like he's talking over my head, but at the same time, I always feel like I'm learning something when I'm listening to him. And I don't think I think that there's a lot to that, Carl, like you're saying. Yes, also the Nvidia side of it, but he generally seems like, I mean, he's been now in the public eye for well over a year, 2+ years. And obviously before that, but I'm just talking about the Gen AI era, if you will, late 2022. And I don't hear negative stories about him like you might about other founders, leaders, the Mark Zuckerbergs, et cetera. So I don't know if that's an indicator that maybe I'm not reading the right stuff or whatever, but I don't see it out there. So it's really interesting that he seems to have the respect of people, or it's that he's holding the keys to the castle and they have no choice.
So the one thing that the image that keeps coming to mind, or the video clip comes to mind, is, I don't know if you all remember the soup Nazi, Jerry Seinfeld, right? Soup Nazi.
The suit for you.
No chips for you. You say anything bad. Where are you gonna get your chips? AMD, Intel? Like, you're not gonna get any of those. So,
We're taking a humorous look at it, but you're right, Carl. That's a single point of failure. I know TSMC built a plant in Arizona, and that's going to help more about the actual chip manufacturing. But when it comes to design and implementation, that's all NVIDIA, right? So I think there is a burden on Google and Amazon to fulfill more of that need.
The real single point of failure is Taiwan Semiconductor, because Taiwan is where NVIDIA chips are built. And if Taiwan were to be blockaded by China in the maelstrom of geopolitical things that are happening with the new US administration, that would really torpedo a lot of what's happening in the markets today.
Yeah, but isn't part of the Arizona campus online now with TSMC? I don't mean to say that is something.
Yeah.
But it-
It's a tighter
You have asked in that issue, but it doesn't have it, it's a it's a better choice and it increases capacity, but it's not a replacement. So we need more, and maybe not from only TSMC, maybe maybe from other manufacturers itself, or build a in-house manufacturer or whatnot. I think that might be a good solution too.
And we've historically seen this, right? I don't know. Do you guys remember? I think we all lived through this era. If I don't not to age anybody on this show, but I certainly remember when there were fires and things going on in Taiwan, and the cost of RAM doubled like overnight. This would be the late 90s, maybe pushing into the 2000s, probably 90s though. And I remember like how there was a single point of failure, and there was certain chips and RAM manufacturers for the boards for RAM and stuff like that. And there was a massive fire. I don't think it was anything geopolitical. I think it was actually an event, and it damn near doubled the cost of RAM overnight, because everybody went like, oh, that's where we get all the chips for RAM. And I happen to have a buddy who's two friends whose dad worked in that industry, and it was dinner table discussion. I mean, it was a big enough deal, and how it impacted his job and stuff like that. So, we've seen this before, Jimmy, and I'm not shocked at all that this is why they're diversifying and trying to build as quickly as possible. If you look at I watched a whole interview with the main guy who's in charge of the Arizona campus, and like they're already not just breaking ground, there's buildings standing to double the capacity of what they can do on that campus already. It's not up and running yet, if I remember right, but they're like, I mean, it's literally right there. They built in a place where they have land to grow for sure in Arizona. There's nothing like blocking them in or anything. So that campus is going to be massive in probably 5 years.
Good. Well, Nvidia will announce those quarterly earnings at the end of the market day, I believe, and so we'll all be able to sleep well tonight, knowing either that, and maybe not. Maybe we'll all be, staying up all night trying to figure out what the next steps are. I doubt it. I think it's going to be solid performance. It's not going to be enough to propel Nvidia stock price higher, but it's going to validate that Nvidia still has a nice position there. Let's move on to what I think is the most important piece of news for all of our listeners, which is that now, if you're an OpenAI ChatGPT Plus user, you have access to deep research, and you have just a budget of you can do 10 deep research queries in any month. So that's plenty if you just make sure that the deep research queries you're building are ones that are going to, not, make trivial the incredible capabilities of that tool.
Yeah, 10 per month is like, to me, it feels ridiculously low. Like,
Well, you have to be significantly better than Perplexity now because 10 per month compared to 500 per day. Like,
yeah, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's from what I've seen of deep research in OpenAI, it's not. It's not better. I mean, look, are you going to see some nuances? But if back to Andy, like if we're talking about the general user, 10 per month, you better really be careful
I think
about
it's
what you
true
want.
that there are a number of things that I do with Perplexity's deep research that don't really require deep research, but I just leave it on because it does a deeper, examination and comes back with many more sources before it compiles the report, in effect. But if I recall correctly, people with more nuanced understandings of what the PhD level research ought to look like Ethan Malik, he does rank OpenAI's deep research well above what Perplexity is doing. Now, for the typical user, I don't think you're going to see much of a difference. But if you're really in academia or you're doing scientific research, then I think that you'll enjoy at very low cost 10 such PhD level research projects that would normally take a research assistant many weeks to compile, and that's going to happen in OpenAI now in minutes.
I
so
did drop. I'm gonna drop a video tomorrow because I did compare all of them to business work. So there's two. I did two scenarios. One for like a client work that I did, mostly a prospecting case, and then one I had, I think, O3 Mini High develop me a scenario to stress it to see which one of those does, I guess it's all subjective too, in my opinion, which one worked well for that specific business and how in-depth accuracy and all that. The one thing that I don't know if you've all seen, um, I know Google takes a lot of sources, but funny enough, Grok takes the most sources. So in the test, I had Google get 96 sources, Grok at 160 sources. And I was like, whoa, like, obviously it has X or Twitter part of it.
Right, I was about to ask, is that part of it?
Yeah. But what was also neat is you also have to verify more, right? Because just because you have 96 sources, 160 sources, whatever the source number, I think that's the big piece when you're doing the deep research. But one thing, and I've noticed, and maybe you guys can all correct me, because when I was doing the testing, I couldn't do this. The one thing that separates OpenAI's version versus Grok at the moment, Perplexity, um, Claude, I don't know if they do deep research. They have the extended thinking. I don't know if that counts, but I can't upload documents. Like I can now put O3 Mini High and just chuck spreadsheet after spreadsheet after note after Word doc all into it. And I couldn't do that in Grok. I couldn't do that in Perplexity when deep thinking was on. Um, and I couldn't do that. I cou- because I couldn't do those two, I didn't do it in Google. And I still, yeah, there's just some pieces that I couldn't do it. Um, I think I can do it now with Perplexity, but yeah, there's just some ones I couldn't do it. So I was like, I didn't want to do a test like that. But that was the big. If you were going to use deep research, do not sleep on its ability to um analyze lots and lots of documents in a really good way. Because even I think Noah Brown, who is I think the head researcher at OpenAI, I think we all knew this, but confirmed it is O3 that you're using deep research. So I saw there's some times when I just press deep research. I don't want it to actually research and just go into full try to use it as O3 mini high to see how good it is. You could also try that if you're a Plus user. You're 10 to just have a full conversation with deep research because it is O3, but highly recommend you use it for analysis. One thing, just the last thing to note, we were working with police department here, and the one thing that we recommended and they were really excited to try is financial crimes. A lot of the time you don't have to actually investigate like companies. There's a lot of financial data that people have to comb through, and that sometimes you don't have the expertise in house to actually go through it. You do have financial crime investigators, but there's only so many of them, and they're human limited to being human as well, having to analyze data. This thing can analyze, we all know, can analyze ungodly amounts of data very quickly. And I think like that's a really cool use case, but reverse that. Think about all the things that businesses can do by analyzing that data. That alone, even using your entire 10 just to have data analysis and spit out reports for you, it should 10x, 20x businesses whose OKRs every quarter is to produce stupid reports.
Yeah, I think you have a good point too, Carl, which is know your use case. Know exactly what great looks like or should look like, because there was a human side to that was doing it first. Certainly fine to play with, but to your point, if you really want to maximize those 10, the first thing you really should be doing is probably using like 4.0 or other available models to deeply understand. I would even go as far as like go find a couple blogs about deep research, see what they're saying, pull them into the conversation before you use deep research, and really try to get a good understanding of what a great prompt would look like to do the thing you're looking for it to do. What I wouldn't do with 10 a month, because you don't have it, is you can't go in there and just mess around. I mean, you'll be out of them, and then you'll be the next month. So it's not a super efficient way to do it, but that's okay. You can use the other models to get very, very good at the types of prompting you should be using. And we saw this when they put out deep research, which was to say, don't be overly complicated. Say exactly what it is you're looking for. You don't need to give it chain of thought thinking. It already does that very well from a basic sentence. So these are the kind of things I would recommend people do if you really want to get the most of it. If you want to play around, play around. But if you want to get the most of it, I would be doing as much prep work. Use Perplexity, use whatever you have available to you to try to really dial in that prompt before you test it out, just so you can try to get the most value out of that very first one, and you don't feel like you're missing it. There's going to be adjustments, obviously, in a learning curve, but to curb that a little bit, I would say that's one of the best ways to go about it.
I feel like Perplexity has sort of gotten us perhaps into a bad habit in this context, because Perplexity has been doing, let's say, shallow research as its regular or medium research as its regular interface. How many of us actually go and read every source for every query that we do? I think we're not in that. And I'm a little concerned and very concerned with Grok, because of the research that I did. I asked it to do research for me, is that there's like $300 bills on the stack, and then the rest is like ones, right? So like I get a response. I ask Grok like what people were thinking about 3.7 to prep for yesterday's show. And it gave me some really interesting things. And I clicked on their profiles, and they have 376 followers. Right?
Yeah.
Like, what? Why is Matt Schumer not in this list? Why is Ethan Mollick not on this list? Like, I think we just need to have a sense of where the data is coming from. And so lots of conversations here, but just like, okay, have we been lulled into thinking that the summary is enough and we're no longer paying attention to what is being summarized?
And that's why I recommend, if you have, you use any of these tools, actually use it to verify its own sources. So
Mm.
I actually, in the things like, hey, okay, I have this prompt that I use, something to just make sure, like, hey, what I noticed is, when I used that prompt on Oliver, Perplexity had the best response because it had verified sources, unverified sources, ambiguous sources, and it broke it down like that. And then it showed you what sources it pulled. It pulled all of them still. Grok and OpenAI are bad in checking itself. What, but the thing is, though, I think the amount of work, things that you saved, and all you have to do is verify the sources is a pretty big deal. Now, if you upload all that stuff, even better, because then the sources are just your sources versus not deep research. Just to clarify, Claude cannot access internet, right? Can't turn you on. Just for now. I think there's a bunch of rumors that, but it
But
can't
through Perplexity.
through Perplexity can, yeah.
In Claude.ai, no.
No, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's still some that's not really the news for today, but I think there is still some competitive advantage to the way they're doing that. But it is a limiting factor because I can't just do the same stuff and test Claude side by side because I use so much of internet research and the types of solutions I build. But once you go past and you're doing deep research on I don't know, pick a topic that doesn't care if there's new research on it since 2023, 2024. Cloud should just easily be as good, but there's a lot to be said for pulling in good research. I also want to do one quick clarification, Andy, before you maybe move on. Didn't we say Claude? Didn't we say Carl? That one major difference with deep research in Pro, and I'm curious, I don't know the answer to this, was that it was adjusting during its research phase to sort of dynamically map out where it was going to go next based on the last level of research. And we made a distinction in that show when you gave a demo of that, saying that that is not what Gemini appears to be doing. That is not what Perplexity does. That they think through it. They give you a chain of thought. They, meaning the models, use a chain of thought reasoning, and they go, "This is what I think I need to do to solve this problem." And then they're like, "I got this information. Now I can move on. Now I can move on." I thought I remember you saying with Pro that one of the clear distinctions of OpenAI was that, let's say it moved down to number 3 and found something that conflicted with something above it, that it actually changed its approach dynamically. Does that sound right?
It does have that. It has that adaptive capability. That's correct.
And are they the only ones that have that to our knowledge?
Well, here's another thing that's really interesting. In addition to that, of all the models, most of them just go right into thinking, right? So you put in your prompt, it goes right into executing. The only one that actually, Google kind of does it, but they just want you to accept their plan. They're like, "This is my plan. Yes," or edit the plan. What OpenAI does is actually ask you clarifying questions. It's the only one that does that. It goes, "Okay, based on this, here's the 5 things that I'm gonna ask you to." It clarifies. Now, if you have in your custom instructions clarifying questions, I spent like 15 minutes clarify. It just kept trying to clarify like over and over again. I think I got it to get stuck. So it kept asking clarifying questions. It just kept rotating itself. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I had to actually remove it because it stopped. I think they fixed it though. But yeah, you're right. On that case, yes. And then on the asking clarification questions, I don't know why the other ones wouldn't do that, because it helps you think through your research better. Because even though how good your prompt is, it's really good to just like, oh, right, this is what I want. Or, oh, I didn't think of that. I'd love to put more of that. Like you can put that, I guess, in the prompt, but it's just nice to have that.
Now, I'm assuming the last thought here is that you're right that I forgot deep research asks you a quick clarifying question. I'm assuming that does not count against your 10. That'd be really crappy of them.
Such a low.
You're like, now you got 2. We got a follow-up question. You're like, no more follow-up questions. No more follow-up questions.
Stop following up. And it's like, it follows up. It's like, are you sure? Counts as 3.
Yeah, there's 3.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say they haven't thought about that. And yes, it totally counts against your thing. And maybe there'll be a announcement in 3 days, like, oh yeah, no, we O3 Mini is gonna ask all your clarifying questions.
I was supposed to joke about that. I'm imagining that's not the case, that is all part of one. In other words, the actual deep research is the one. Clarifying questions probably do not count against it. Surely they thought about that, but I don't know.
I'm gonna send a note to the head of product right now in LinkedIn and ask that question to see if it actually, it's like, what is that?
Breaking news on the Daily AI Show news show here. If I get an answer from Carl.
Okay, we've gone deep, deep, deep into deep research, but let's remember that deep research is a combination of the reasoning skills, whether applied in advance of the collection of the relevant sources, or as we know that the OpenAI deep research thing can do, it can in midstream stop, reconsider, adapt, and chase after news sources. Well, Perplexity, shifting over to Perplexity news, Perplexity has opened up a wait list for Comet, which is a browser for agentic search by Perplexity. Now, Perplexity doesn't have its own deep thinking models, but it has, in the library of models you can use with Perplexity, it has a bunch of different ones, including O3 Mini, etc., and DeepSeek R1 in their own version of that that's not connected to China, right? Because it's open source, they built it that way. So this announcement and opening of a waitlist for an agentic search browser is really in line with what we've been discussing here, because now what you've got is you've got reasoning models that can think through these things, and you have a browser that has some agentic capabilities. We don't know what they are yet, but what that implies to me is this idea that it's going to be deeply thinking about what to look at next in order to solve the problem or the research project that you've given it. So Comet, and then also just another bit of Perplexity news is they've mounted a post-trained DeepSeek R1 model that removes all of the Chinese censorship stuff. So they've retuned the model that is DeepSeek R1, and so now you can use not only a DeepSeek R1 model, a very capable reasoning model, on Perplexity without it connecting to China's servers, but it also has been sort of sanitized of all of the biases that they identified having come from the Chinese Communist Party.
And the model is 1776. So just
1776.
going right at it. Yep.
Just call it freedom, why don't you? Or America. America would be the name for that. Just apostrophe America. I do real quick on the comment thing. Andy, what you said is not where my brain went with that. I'm assuming that Comet will actually be a competitor to Operator. Because what I'm assuming is if we build our own browser and we control how you're using Perplexity to control that, wouldn't it make sense that it's capable perhaps of doing Operator-like agentic workflows? Perhaps it's sort of I show you, you do it on your own for repeated tasks, such as maybe going to YouTube and grabbing the latest stats on the such and such.
I hope you're right, But the single sentence that's on the Comet page is agentic search, which is different from agentic operation in the browser. But it could be that they provide that as well. I hope so. Got my fingers crossed on that.
So I wanna roll back here a bit. First of all, the company Adept, way back when, remember they have cool demos? They actually released a product that did that before they were acquired. I can't remember the company who acquired them. Please don't be Salesforce, but somebody acquired them. But I remember that's what I downloaded it as a, like, you got to beta it. So essentially it would just copy your clicks, and then it would just essentially replicate how you did things online.
Yep.
Right. That was the product. So, and I keep coming back to Matt Schumer, who I still think today, it's like, dude, you should have just stayed doing what you're doing, because everyone literally copied what you're doing. He's the CEO of Hyperwrite, and we all saw the demo, right? It wasn't very good.
We demoed it.
Yeah.
On the show, like, what, a year and a half ago?
Yes, way before Operator, way before
Yes.
and I was like, and nothing happened. And then Operator came out. It's like, oh, this is amazing. He's like, well, kind of. That's why
Interviews came out, then Operator.
Yeah.
Remember, Anthropic was next.
Yes, it was. So I sent him a note like, dude, like, you had the jump on everybody, and it just stopped. And then he like thumbs up my comment, and that was it. I was like, okay, it must suck. Feel wait.
Okay. So it isn't Salesforce, but when I search it, Amazon and Microsoft are the names that are mentioned. So I realize it's not it's not Salesforce, but it's still not flavors that you like, Carl.
Yeah.
I want to pivot because Gareth just asked about it. There are three big stories about comparing approaches to data centers in this news cycle. Microsoft is pulling back from a bunch of their leases um, for data centers, including multiple 100-megawatt deals that were in mid-stage negotiations. So they terminated contracts totaling a couple of 100 megawatts, enough power for 2 large data centers. They may be, the speculation is that Microsoft may be in an oversupply situation, but it's also, partly, I think, from the effects that DeepSeek and DeepSeek's purported training, is having, right? So people are doing different things in terms of data centers. Meta, Zuck is absolutely like, nope, we're going hard, we're going all the way. $200 billion data center is in talks to build a new AI data center campus that would be over 200 billion. They're considering locations in Louisiana, Wyoming, and Texas. So again, like he's doing like the Elon approach. I don't know that he's sequencing them together, but he's like, throw all the money at it and let's just do what we think is working. And China is expanding their underwater data center in Lingshui, Hainan province. They added a new 18-meter module, which includes 400 high-performing servers capable of handling 7,000 DeepSeek queries per second. And so each of these is kind of interesting, but but for me, the real part of this story that is interesting is that we are now in a position where people are taking really different approaches, right? And China has, I didn't know about their underwater data centers before. We've certainly talked about, like, are you going to start putting them in naturally colder climates? Underwater also has its naturally cooling thing. It also prevents oxygen damage, right? And there's no dust underwater, right? Like those things that are things that you need to protect your servers from. But I think it's really interesting that we're in a position where the old approach is not a guarantee. China was kind of forced into it. And it looks like Microsoft's considering some stuff.
I keep part of the Part of the rollback in, capacity in data centers from Microsoft is just scaled exactly to the loss of OpenAI's,
Oh,
intended usage of Microsoft servers. I think that that's probably the biggest factor in that, but it is also it's been translated, as you point out, by analysts as, Microsoft is not confident about the future of business adoption of AI from Microsoft. I
well, about really about their usage, I thought, right?
Well, okay, but this is the point that I've heard that I've also heard analysts talk about, which I 100% agree with. Okay, I'm still not 100% sure. You guys know this. Like, I'm still really on the fence of whether DeepSeek legitimately did something novel, and that there has been huge efficiency gains somewhere. Okay, that's my baseline of sitting on the fence. But even if they did, even if it comes out that they in fact did more with less money, less data set, whatever, less training or whatever, doesn't that mean that it's going to open the floodgates for cheaper, more available use of AI, which is going to mean more people who are not using AI right now are going to want to use it, which means we need the more data centers. Why would you pull back on building data centers right now? I'd be 100% team Zuck on this one. All in, build them, because I don't think you're going to be mad that you have more compute ability as we ratchet up AI, even if the whole DeepSeek thing turns out to be 100% true and there's efficiencies to be gained. To me, that just means millions more people using AI, ChatGPTs, whatever, daily that aren't using it right now.
True. But
Isn't it the
if a new yes, it is, say it again, Carl?
the Jevons paradox where it becomes so cheap that everybody uses it, so you need more of it?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But that's where efficiencies can have an impact, right? If you have a very expensive, inefficient, and unpopular based on the effects that it has on the people around it or whatever, this like element of doubt, I can see pulling back from that. Absolutely.
There are going to be efficiencies gained in various ways in inference in data centers, and I want to point out one, which is we've talked about this company. It's at the top of the leaderboards in terms of utilization by the population out there. Character AI. So character AI happens to be, I think, number 3, behind ChatGPT or whatever. Uh, I've looked recently at what that ranking is for the number of, daily users of a system. But character AI has an inference system that has to process 20,000 queries per second. Okay, that's big. And what they've built is a new and more efficient way of doing that. And there's a thing called KV cache, which is used in the inference process. And Cisco, I'm talking to you now because I know you're interested in these technical deep dives here. So those are the key and value components, the vectors of the computations that are done in inference. And so the KV cache is something that is used to avoid having to recalculate those every time a new token is presented to the inference stream. So what they've done is they've combined a KV cache with a thing called multi-query attention, where in effect they group queries that are similar and using similar tokens, and they put them through the same path. And what this does is it reduces the memory requirement and the storage requirements simultaneously and makes for vastly more efficient inference so that they can process inference faster. That means the data centers and the chips that are doing the computations in those data centers don't have to work so hard, and larger numbers of people using the inference in the data center can do that in parallel. And so that delivers efficiencies that reduce the number of GPUs and all of the things that are worrisome to people like Nvidia and the analysts and investors who follow them. There will be advances like this that are driven by the very high volumes of the leaders in the marketplace. And it won't be as simple as, oh, we have to scale data centers across the world in order to meet the growing demand. we will have to scale them a little bit, but it won't be as much as linear scaling would require right now based on the current efficiencies of, let's say, OpenAI's inference paths.
And by the way, less data centers that's a good thing for the world right now, because the only way to really truly power them are through fossil fuels, because we needed them so fast. I just watched another great YouTube. It was from CNBC, but again, they're breaking down the different ways that different companies, hydrogen, nuclear, we talked about all those specifically for data centers. It's just a lot of it's not online. It's still being proven and all that. And the reality is, if you're building net new data centers, it's more than likely not green. It's probably not even close. So having less data centers is quite frankly better for the planet. Power still a scarce resource. So ultimately, I think it's better. I do want to catch up really quick before we get into other news stories, because we have our folks in the chat are awesome. So Greg had brought up too. He said, didn't Google do the underwater thing, or was it a Microsoft? I thought it was Microsoft, but you might be right, Gareth, that it was Google. One of them, though, definitely had. I mean, this is going back years. Had the whole idea of data centers in the water. I don't know where that project ultimately ended up, but I remember the same thing: is that they didn't continue on with it for whatever reason. They look like massive, like bigger versions of 50-gallon drums, is what I remember, and they were just off the shore. 30 feet down or whatever they were. And then Greg obviously said, what we really need is the ticket really is data centers in space, which is a throwback to one of our earlier conversations of this show, talking about pie in the sky ideas and just build data centers in space. And then we found out that was like sort of maybe kind of a real thing. And then I just want to bring in one last one in here. Jude, who was talking about a bunch of like doing, the sea and deep seek and all that. And then I don't know where Jude goes. Also, Space Ghost. And so thank you, Jude, for the huge trip down memory lane, thinking about Space Ghost, for anybody who remembers that cartoon, and doing the interview series of Space Ghost. So either Johnny Bravo or Space Ghost, I think, need to be the AI avatar equivalents on this show. So just wanted to bring in some people, because there's awesome conversations going on in our chat. We love you guys, and thanks for the input into today's show for sure. All right, I got a few more, Andy. I know other people jump in. I have a couple quick ones too.
Yeah, jump in. Junmi, have you got a news item?
I do. I have 3 that are weaved together. So join me on this AI and science journey, and perhaps you too can make the logical jumps I did. All right. So first of all, we have, coming out of the University of Copenhagen, AI unlocks the emotional language of animals. So the university did a study and used machine learning and trained a machine learning to decode emotions of 7 different ungulate species. So what's an ungulate species? We're talking about cows, pigs, any hooved animal, really, right? And so it was able to analyze the acoustic patterns of their vocalizations, and achieved an accuracy rating of 89.49%. That's pretty high in my eyes, right? So auspices and accuracy. High accuracy. And the big takeaway for me is it can be used as they have identified universal acoustic patterns. So they found key predictors of emotional variance were consistent across species, right? Indicating an evolutionary conserved emotional expression system. But essentially what that basically means is they kind of all speak the same language, all right? And this is across species. Okay, so keep that in mind, right? So they must all work or think in a certain way. Okay, now we'll move on. That alone is awesome. I mean, I'm sure every animal vet, animal husbandry vet would want to just be able to go look on their phone and be like, they're in distress, or they're feeling down a little bit. Okay, let's give them a treat or something like that. Andy, I'm sure you might have some use for a device.
It's not surprising at all to me, Jin. Maybe we live with horses here and have for 25 years, and they have vocalizations that are clearly emotionally based. Like we know what they're saying, at least on the scale of what their emotional state is.
Right. Okay. Story 2.
Okay, can you wait one
All right.
second there? Was it the Simpsons
Yeah.
episode that had the talking dog that Homer invented, or was that something else? Did I make that up? Because I remember.
I assume now that the Simpsons have commented on the future. They are the modern day Nostradamus.
Yes.
So, but that could be a whole nother show in and of itself. Probably something we talk about the sci-fi AI show.
It's a sci-fi AI topic right there.
Show, right? Really? Okay. So, weave number 2. MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, researchers have found that large language models process diverse types of data like different languages, audio, images, similarly to how humans reason about complex problems. Okay. The main takeaway of their identification is humans have a semantic hub, right? We interpret a lot of different types of data, modalities, right? We absorb it into the hub, and then it gets parsed into what our internal language is, right? So, like, let's say you are a native English speaker or something like that. This is how you bring in all of this stuff. It translates into your internal system and are sent out into the different regions of your brain to for relational information processing and things like that, right? So we know that LLMs are black boxes. So there's a lot of research going on to figure out what is that internal mechanism. And what MIT has found is they have evidence that shows that LLMs function similarly. They have their own semantic hub where they translate whatever that native language that they were built into, takes in that data, breaks it up, and sends it out to the corresponding spoke as part of that black box process. So there is some similarity there. We know that LLMs and neural networks are built upon things that we've seen in, human brains, and they're studied to see more correlation between that. But the big takeaway from me here is that we can see a little deeper into that black box, and we can see more alignment. So first story is LLMs can identify that emotional state in animals, and all those animals have a similar language. LLMs in human brains work sort of. There's some insight and interconnection there. And now onto the Weave 3. All right. So groundbreaking study from the Queen Mary University of London reveals how topology drive complexity in brain, climate, and AI. All right. So what they have discovered is there is a common language of how you can determine or read complexity in vastly complex topologies, right? Vastly complex systems, such as identifying how climate works or how weather works, how our brain processes information, and how AI processes information. So this is a deeper dive into that black box. So if there's a commonality in the language of emotional intelligence in animals of similar species, and we see a correlation between the processes of how AI functions similar to the human brain. And now we have a common framework common language of how to understand complex systems. It all weaves together so that there may actually be insights on how all complex systems compute information and translate information and transfer information.
Bravo, Junie. That was a fractal weave there. I was having fractal images going on through my neural network there. Wow.
We have
Okay, hey,
sound effects to this show. When did that happen?
I use them sparingly, but they are part of Talk Studio.
Okay, I have to abdicate the throne of the position of being the moderator on this discussion and pass it over to Brian because it's my wife's birthday and I have to leave right now on a breakfast date. So great talking to you all. Enjoy the remainder of the show, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you, Andy. Have a great one. Have a good breakfast. So I only have a couple here, guys, and then we can just whatever you guys have, we'll try to do this quick. Okay, I have 2 Google ones. Number one, Google has said that their cost for VO2, that's their really, really good video generator, will be 50 cents per second of video, which adds up to about $30 per minute or 1,800 per hour. That's not cheap, but it's a really, really good video generator. I will say that. So I wanted to bring that up because that'll be interesting to see how that affects because they were comparing it to Sora. But I mean, Sora does not hold a candle to how good the VO2 is. So there's that. The other Google Drive or Google News was about Google Drive. I don't currently have this, but basically Google Drive gets searchable video transcripts. Kind of AI, I guess. But basically, here's the rub on this one because I went both into the Daily AI Show Google Drive as well as my own personal one, and I didn't see anything in there. But basically, as you would assume, well, once you think about this, it has to have captions. So if it has captions, it'll create a transcript for you. I mean, there's a lot of value to that, but this is the first stepping stone for me towards not only being able to search your Google Drive or your business Google Drive, because we use it at scaled as well, but being able to search within videos. You can imagine very quickly if we had all of our daily AI shows in a Google Drive and they all had transcripts, in the near future, we should be able to do a simple search query that says, when did we talk about whatever? And I'll pivot to talk about my next one, which is about Sakana. When did we talk about Sakana? And it's like February 26th. You also talked about them in one. Which clip do you want to see? And it just goes and searches that vast data set of transcripts, timestamp transcripts, and brings back perfect video clips. We kind of see this already on YouTube, so it does not shock. It's not shocking to see Google do this with Google Drive, but man, am I here for it because I think that's really going to help businesses who rely on Google Drive. And if you're like me or the businesses I work for, it's not organized. And so having really advanced searches that can go and dig through the mess is going to be really, really important. Obviously, having it organized first would be great. Now here's a say it ain't so Sakana.
Can I just comment on that? Comment on that. I want to comment on that. It's more of a rant because Google's did it right. You know what Microsoft doesn't do right? That like Copilot should do that. None of this other crap that Copilot does. Why doesn't Copilot do that? Because it's garbage. Okay, continue.
Yeah. Okay. So my Sakana story is now, if you guys remember, Sakana is a company that I think we all kind of collectively talked well about because they do some really cool stuff. They're the company that's out of Japan. We've done whole shows about some of their research papers. They always are innovating. Well, Sakana walks back claims that AI can dramatically speed up model training. So Sakana AI came out with this new idea, this model training. The only problem is it didn't work. Users on X quickly discovered the Sakana system actually resulted in worse than average model training performance. According to one user, Sakana's AI resulted in a 3x slowdown, not a speed up. What went wrong? This is from TechCrunch, by the way. A bug in the code, according to a post by Lucas Bayer, a member of the technical staff at OpenAI. The original code was wrong. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on. And then it says at the bottom here, this is from, I think, from Sakana. We have since made the evaluation and runtime profile harness more robust to eliminate many such loopholes. The company wrote, we're in the process of revising our paper and our results to reflect and discuss the effects. We deeply apologize for an oversight. To our readers, we will provide a revision of this work soon and to discuss our learnings. And then the TechCrunch author said, props to Sakana for owing up to the mistake. But the episode is a good reminder that if claims sound to be too good to true, especially in AI, it probably is. So, look, I'm kind of like, I want to kind of do all the things, and like, I just like their company. I like the stuff that they put out. I like their research, but I kind of agree with this author, which is Kyle Wiggers, who's the author of this TechCrunch article. At least they owned up to it, and they weren't like, not us. It was, our stuff is still great. It was like, no, there was a problem, and we're gonna fix it, and we're really sorry about it. Moving on. And I would much rather see that from a company. It just makes me respect them more. I mean, people are going to mess up, companies are going to mess up, but I'm going to respect you a whole lot more if you own up to it and just move on instead of trying to bury it or something. And then I think that I had one more and it was about Poe, but we're almost out of time. So let me jump over to you guys. Beth, Carl, Jimmy, do you guys have any sort of rapid fire news stories that we want to get into this show?
So there's noise happening in my background. I'm sorry if you can hear that,
Yep.
but go to Claude 3.7 and ask it to count how many R's are in strawberry. It is an Easter egg. You're welcome. That's my
Okay.
thing.
I'm going to do that. Carl, any other last stories?
University
ahead,
of
Jim.
California, Santa Barbara is basically doing research that may lead to programmable matter or a living metal. I'll leave it at that.
I mean, another story to dig into for sure. Okay, we'll wrap it up there, guys. We talked about a lot on this show. I've talked about a lot of different stories. Thanks to Andy for kicking this all off for us. Hopefully, you guys got something out of it. We always enjoy doing the show once a week to try to catch up on all the latest AI news. Don't forget, though, we have shows coming up the rest of the week. Even if this is the only time you've ever seen our faces before, believe it or not, this is episode 408. Today. So we've been doing this for a while. So we do this live every day at 10 a.m. Eastern. Come hang out with us. Not only us, come hang out with all the amazing people in our chat on YouTube who are effectively the other co-hosts, the other parts of the show, and are just an integral part of it. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about Microsoft's mind-blowing quantum discovery. We talked about that a little bit last week, but we really wanted to give that its own space and really dive into why that's such a big deal. And a lot of times quantum computing and doesn't always necessarily get associated with AI, but there's a lot of connectors there about what a improvement in quantum computing could mean to AI and vice versa. So we're going to be talking all about that tomorrow. Friday, we're doing a tool review. If you haven't heard of the company N8N, and I'm saying that very slow for Beth, that's the capital letter N, the number 8, and the capital or then N, lowercase N's. I messed it up anyway, Beth. This gets messed up in our transcript. That's why I'm saying it slow. N8N. It's like a Maker Zapier, but it's a little bit different. A lot of us have been playing. I know Carl's been playing in there. I've been building in there. And so we're going to give you our tool review of what we think is kind of cool about it, why we would perhaps be in that particular workflow builder over a Maker Zapier. That's all coming up on Friday. So if you're interested about that, if you never heard about that company, we're going to hit that on Friday. Last thing I'll say is thank you to all our folks in the chat. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here. Like I said, we're here Monday through Friday. Come hang out with us. You can always go to the website as well, thedailyaishow.com, where you can find more information about the show. But crucially, you can also sign up for our free newsletter that goes out every week. We're not at 40 yet, but we're almost at issue number 40. So we've been doing this almost a year. I started it last summer, I believe. So come hang out and subscribe for that if you want more amazing content from our crew that we're not able to get into the show. That's it. Got it done under an hour. Everybody have a great day. And we will see you tomorrow to talk about Microsoft's quantum breakthrough. Until then.
Aloha.